This is Business Week Armenia, SivilNet's weekly economic digest. Here's what's making business headlines in Armenia this week. Armenia's parliament voted this week to pass a bill allowing the government to seize control of the country's main power distributor, just days after the family of the utility's jailed billionaire owner said they were ready to file a lawsuit disputing any potential seizure. The vote fell along party lines, with 65 members of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's Civil Contract Party voting in favor of nationalizing Electric Networks of Armenia, or ENA, while 27 opposition lawmakers voted against the measure. Days before, the family of Samvel Karapetyan issued a statement warning they were ready to file an international arbitration case against the government, alleging violations of a 3-decade-old bilateral investment treaty between Armenia and Cyprus. Karapetyan, one of Armenia's richest men, owns ENA through his Russian-based Tashir Group conglomerate and a Cyprus-registered holding company. ENA, which Karapetyan bought from a Russian holding company a decade ago, employs some 7,000 people in Armenia and holds a monopoly on the country's power distribution network. The government did not immediately react to the news of the Karapetyan family's incoming lawsuit. In a further escalation this week, law enforcement raided Tashir Group's Yerevan office, seizing computers and documents. Afterward, the government said the searches were related to a criminal probe into alleged money laundering and tax evasion, but so far have not announced further criminal charges against Karapetyan or any other company executives. A lawyer for Karapetyan quickly rejected those allegations, calling the raid the latest in a chain of illegalities by the government against the billionaire. These latest developments come just weeks after Pashinyan first floated plans to seize ENA. That, in turn, came after law enforcement detained Karapetyan, who holds both Armenian and Russian passports, on charges of making calls for regime change. If found guilty, Karapetyan could face up to 5 years in prison. He maintains his innocence, and his lawyer has called the charges politically motivated. ENA has faced mounting public criticism since last year, when outages started becoming increasingly frequent across Armenia. But company executives have refused blame, instead saying ENA's previous Russian owners failed to maintain the grid. They also point to the fact that Tashir Group has poured at least $700 million into the aging utility in the past decade, which, they say, has allowed them to keep electricity prices relatively inexpensive for consumers. Regardless, the government's plan to seize ENA has spooked the private sector, with a number of prominent business leaders and former senior officials warning it could threaten Armenia's attractiveness to foreign investors. Despite mounting criticism, Pashinyan continues to insist that improving the country's business environment is a priority for this administration. You can find more information and all the latest news in this fast-moving case on our website at civilnet.am. And finally, Armenia's largest mine paid the government more than $29 million this week in dividends on last year's earnings, Pashinyan said in a post on his official Facebook page. That, the Prime Minister added, takes the government's total earnings since it took partial ownership of the Zangezur Copper-Molybdenum Combine several years ago to about $115.5 million. The Zangezur Combine did not immediately comment on the matter. In late 2021, Roman Tratsenko, a Russian oligarch with close ties to President Vladimir Putin, took over the highly lucrative enterprise and then immediately ceded a minority stake to the Armenian government in still unclear circumstances. The government has since increased its stake to almost 22%, even while Tratsenko remains under sanctions by the United States and European Union. The Zangezur Combine, one of the world's top molybdenum producers, plays a key role in Armenia's economy. The sprawling enterprise in Armenia's strategically positioned southernmost Syunik region employs some 4,600 people and paid upward of $265 million in taxes last year, making it the country's biggest employer and taxpayer. Tratsenko's takeover is now being challenged in a $1.2 billion arbitration suit brought against the Armenian government in Washington by a Cyprus-registered shell company that has its own minority stake in the mine. It is the biggest lawsuit ever filed against the Armenian government. In a separate development earlier this year, hundreds of Zangezur employees launched an unprecedented strike demanding higher wages and better working conditions. The company says it incurred daily losses of about $1 million during the 11-day work stoppage. Even though it owns a sizable stake in the enterprise, the government pointedly refused to help resolve the strike. And as always, keep following CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.